In front of you for the photogram, you should have a collection of cutouts. In my case, I have 1, 2, 3 cutouts, and then I've chosen to take from this pile of letters to spell out nothing really, but repeat M's, and I have an I and an S. But what you're going to notice here is some of my cutouts have been flipped and mirrored so that we're seeing the backside and they are upside down. Another thing I'd like you to notice is that some cutouts I've just decided it's useful for my design to just have a shape to block out an area to keep it light. Another thing that you will see is that I'm rotating different letters so that they fit different orientations and they give my piece a bit more of a dynamic feeling. And then another thing you'll notice is I'm using repetition to create a sense of rhythm or pattern. And lastly, not all of my letters are fully on the page, meaning I'm not using the edge as a crutch. I'm allowing letters to come all the way across. So make sure that you're really thinking about how your composition is set up and if it's going to actively engage your viewer. Things that you will need additionally outside of just our cutouts is you're going to need some transparent objects. So here I have a baggie that I actually just ate a frozen meal out of. You'll notice it's got some condensation, which is kind of cool. I think that's going to create some cool texture when we get in the darkroom. Another thing I have in front of me is, whoops, sorry for hitting the camera. Another thing I have right here is a piece of film. It does have a negative on it because I thought that might be interesting to see how that works. Once I take everything off, I might be able to place this in one area of the composition. And so I just want to talk you through how I'm thinking about my print. So the first thing and the most important thing is figuring out your composition. Your composition is going to be created on your first initial print. So what you want to do is figure out what areas do you want to either keep pure white, or what areas do you want to have as light grays, because all of this is going to matter. Whatever you keep on your canvas or your composition right now is going to stay white if you keep it in the same spot or you cover it in the future. For example, let's say we printed this image and then I took my hand away. You won't see the hand there, but it has printed on your paper. And on the second print, I decide to replace it with my dog. What you will see on the second print is that the silhouette of the hand, if you remember the ram's horn from my examples on my PowerPoint, we would have an image of my dog Frankie inside the hand, and it would be lighter than any of the image that's exposed outside of the hand because it's already been burned once before. So you want to be thinking about the layering process and what's going to be your lightest light. Like, let's say I just wanted to keep the hand white the whole time. I didn't want anything to get in the way of this cutout. I would probably just want to get a piece of tape and keep it on my hand for when I get to placing it on my photo paper, because I wouldn't want it to move. I would just want it to stay fixed right there. Now, let's say I wanted to keep a space white so that maybe I can highlight one of my letters. And so I print the first print like this, and then I move this guy out of the way. And I'm gonna have to guess kind of where I put that square because I can't see it. It'll stay white. So I'm gonna kind of orientate my T in that section. And when we do our second print, I'll know that that white area is going to stay white, and then the box that was hidden on the first print is going to go gray, and then everything else is going to go a little bit darker. This will all make sense. I'm going to bring us into the print lab in the dark room, and I'm going to show you step by step, and I'm going to make 3 different examples of each stage of the process so you can see exactly how this is going to work. All right, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to grab your paper. Your paper will be in one of these containers. They'll be in a bag, in a box, down. I'm not sure how I'm going to organize it, but you'll either have it here or you'll have it here separated by hour, and you'll have to label it with your name. Okay? So you're going to grab your paper. You're going to bring it over here. Do not open it. Just bring it over here next to the cutting board. You want to make sure that I have prepped for you all the developer, stop bath fixer, and water. If you ever forget the instructions about the darkroom chemical times, you can see them right here. Developers 1 minute. You want to agitate during that. Stop bath fixer, water wash, and then when you're finished, you can hang them up along this rack. You only get 1 print, so do not forget. I also have all my Photogram materials here to work with, so that in case I change my mind about my print or I want to make an adjustment, I have everything here. You want to make sure that your enlarger is plugged in properly. The enlarger gets plugged into the bottom, and then your clock gets plugged into an external outlet. And that's about it. That's what we need to get started. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how we're going to make our first print for our photogram. First thing is first, we need to adjust the height of our enlarger to go as high as it can go. So you're going to want to make sure your elevation knob is loosened all the way, and you're going to slide this all the way up as high as it can go. And then you can scroll that tight. Now that we have all of our materials here and we're ready to start, you want to double check your timer and just make sure that everything turns on properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the left side of the timer, and we're just going to make sure that the switch is switched to the right side. That's our focus side. And then we're going to turn our enlarger on by going to the right side of the clock and turning the switch from off to on. If you look at the enlarger, you can see that this entire space is lit up. And that's really all we want. We want to make sure that this entire space is lit up. Now, additionally, you have a focus knob here that adjusts the aperture. So watch what happens when I turn this thing. You see how much brighter it gets? We want to keep that on the very last setting and then clicked up 1 from that. So again, make sure to check your aperture settings. You don't want it all the way up. Now that we know our light works, we've got it on the right setting, what we can do is we can switch that over to time. That's going to turn it off. And then we also want to turn off our clock. That gets us ready for the print. Once you have your paper out in front of you, out from the plastic baggie, you're going to take it over to the cutting board. I've already prepped mine, so I'm not going to cut it, but you'll see on the board it'll have a first cut sign and a second cut sign. Your first cut is going to be placing the paper landscape. and cutting along your short edge. And then your second cut is going to turn those sideways so that you have a 5 by 7 inch cut. If you're successful, which you need to be because you only have one shot, you should end up with a piece like this. You should also have extra scraps. This can be great in the future for test strips for our future photograph projects. So save these, do not lose these. Put them back in your baggie. Bring your 5 by 7 cutout to the easel, and you'll notice there's some grooves on the easel. Make sure you're on the side that has 5 by 7 framing, and then open up your easel and use your fingers to kind of find the corner that has 2 grooves in the corner, and slide your paper into that corner. You should be able to feel. There is also a glossy side and a not so glossy side. You can kind of feel it. The glossy side has a bit of a grain to it, but also if you bring it to the light, you can see the sheen. So make sure the glossy side is facing up. Otherwise, you're not going to print anything. Once that's aligned, you can close your grid. And now is when it's time for you to start applying your cutouts organized the way you want them on your print. All right, I have my orientation set. The only thing I'm missing is my transparency effect on the first exposure. What I would like to do is use my beads and apply my beads on the surface in some spots that feel like they make sense. I'm not sure how these are going to affect my image. I don't know if they're going to be dark or if they're going to be super light because they're blocking out a bunch of light. I don't know if they're going to shoot light in all different directions. So we're going to explore it and we're just going to give it a shot. Part of this is just going to be experimentation, and we're just not going to know what the final image is going to turn out to be. So I'm going to set my clock. I'm going to make sure it's off first. So if we're looking at my clock, I'm going to make sure that the clock itself is off on the right side. I do not want it to be on. You'll be hearing vibrating if it's on. Next thing is we should already have it on time, because if it's on focus, it'll just be on immediately when we press time. So it's off right now. We're going to turn this knob to 2 seconds, and then we are going to make sure we press on, and that is going to expose our print for 2 seconds. Now what we want to do is we want to remember what we want to keep on there to keep white and what we want to block out or change up. I'm going to keep my hand on there. I want it to be on there for one more exposure so it stays pretty light. And I also want to take away some of my letters. I think I'm going to keep anything that I leave on there is going to stay white. And I am going to expose Frankie into this top portion. And now I want to make sure my clock is off. I want to set my timer to 2 seconds, and I'm going to turn that on one more time. Okay, now we have a third exposure. The third exposure is up to you guys what you want to do. It could have stencils. It could literally just be a texture plate, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring in this, you can't see it, it's glass, and it's got a dust over it, and I wrote some M's in the dust. So I'm going to apply those on top just to see what it's like. My timer is still on. See, I forget to. I'm going to turn that off. I wrote some M's in the dust with my finger, and I want to see if that creates any effects. The other thing I really wanted to try was to just splash some water on the surface. So I'm gonna get my hands wet and I'm just gonna splash some water, and we're gonna expose this for 2 seconds. Every exposure time is gonna be 2 seconds, so it's really easy to remember. All right. Now that we're finished, we can put everything aside, turn off our clock, open our exposure, and I'm gonna wipe my hands so I don't get any water on my print. And I'm gonna take this over to the developer. Now we have our print. It doesn't look like anything. We're gonna throw it into the developer. Here's our image. It's starting to show through. You can see some of the M's. We're going to expose this for 1 minute, or develop it for 1 minute, and then we're going to bring it to the stop bath for 30 seconds, and then the fixer for 4 minutes. And then what we'll get to do is look at it under the light and see how our development turned out. I think this is going to look pretty exciting. So now that we have the development done for, well, not a minute yet, a couple more seconds. Don't overdo the developer, but also don't underdo the developer. Straight into the stop bath. Make sure the tongs stay with the developer. We have separate tongs for the stop bath. 30 seconds here. I'm really excited to see this. It looks pretty dark, but I promise you once we get it to the light, we're not seeing a lot of the detail yet. And it's not until you get it into the light that you're going to start to see the detail. Okay, so that's been about 30 seconds. And we're going to put it into the fixer. The fixer is what's going to immediately stop any developer. Stopper stops the development, but fixer just like it says. So this sits in the fixer for 4 minutes, and then we're going to move it to the water station, which sits at the water station for 5 minutes. And again, if you forget what all the steps to the development are, just look up here. It's right above the sink. It shows you all your steps. And then remember, at the very end, hang up your print, and that is how we create a photogram.